Okay, welcome to this video on more complicated questions about direct and inverse proportion. The first question here is about inverse proportion, and we have these quantities A and B that are inversely proportional to each other. Okay, so we start by answering question A, which asks us to find a formula for A in terms of B. So we know that A is inversely proportional to B. So we write that. Okay, that's how you show inverse proportion. And that implies that A is equal to some number K that we've got to find, a constant, divided by B. Now we use this information given in the question to find out what K is. So we know that when A is 12, B is 4, you see. So when A is 12 and B is 4, we get that 12 equals K over 4. Okay, which means if you multiply both sides by 4, that K is 48. So K is called our constant of proportionality, 48. So now we rewrite this equation here, but instead of using K, we can now use 48. So the answer to question A is that, I'll just put it over here, A equals 48 over B. Okay, that's the answer to the actual question. Okay. Now, the next part asks us to use that formula that we've just written to find the value of A when B is equal to 8. So in question B, okay, we set B equal to 8 and we find A. So we have A equals 48 over 8. So it's 48 over 48 over B, and B is equal to 8. So it's 48 over 8. And that, of course, equals 6. And for part C, this time we're given the value of A as being equal to 4. So we put that in place of A. And we know that 4 equals 48 divided by B. Okay, and so we're going to find B by multiplying both sides by B. Okay, so we can say therefore that 4B is equal to 48, and therefore B must be equal to 12. Okay, B equals 12. And that's the answer. Okay, so that's a fairly straightforward inverse proportion question without any particular complications. And that could be on a calculator or non-calculator paper. Now, the second question here is a lot more complicated because it's in two parts and you really need to work through them systematically and then bring them together as I'll show you. So this is how we would start. We just look at the first part. Y is directly proportional to x squared. When x is 3, y is 36. Okay, so we start in the same way. Okay, so we say A, that y is proportional to x squared, and that's direct proportion, okay, which means that y equals k times x squared. Okay, y equals k x squared. Now, we know that when x is 3, y is 36. Okay, so we know that 36 is equal to k times 3 squared. Okay, substituting the y with 36 and the x with 3. Well, 3 squared is 9, so 36 equals 9k, which implies that k equals 36 over 9, which is 4. Okay, it's fairly easy to see that k would be 4. Okay, so therefore our equation of proportionality becomes y equals 4x squared. Okay, so that's part A, which is quite straightforward, similar sort of difficulty to what we did in the previous question. Now, part B, we now have this extra piece of information coming in. Z is inversely proportional to x. So let's work on that first, okay? So let's just start part B here, and we can say that Z is inversely proportional to x. In other words, it's proportional to 1 over x, which implies that y equals... Now, I'm not going to use k because I've used that already. I'm going to take another letter, and I'm going to use m, because L could look like 1. So I'll go to the next letter in the alphabet, which is M. So y equals m over x. Okay, and I know that when it's not y, actually, it should be z, of course, there. So let me just sort that out. Okay, so z equals m over x. Okay, z, that should be. Right, so z equals m over x. And we know that when x is 4, z is 2. So we can say that 2 equals m over 4. And therefore, if you multiply both sides by 4, that means that m equals 8. And therefore, z equals 8 over x. Okay, so that's an expression for z. Now, we've got to show that this thing here is true, and they're giving you these extra letters C and N that you've got to find. And this is a relationship between z and y. Now, what we currently have is a relationship between x and y and between x and z, but we don't have one between y and z, not yet anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that from this, z can be written in terms of y. Okay, now if you just think about this for a moment, you can see that z equals 8 over x. Okay, and we know that x is equal to, can be written in terms of y from here. So if I just work on this first and rearrange this to find an expression for x. Okay, so I'm going to take the one we found in question A first. So let me just take back that, and we'll do that bit in a minute. So if we look at from A, so I'm just going to say from question A, right, from part A. Okay, we knew that y equals 4x squared. Okay. If we divide both sides by 4, okay, y over 4 would be x squared. Okay, and therefore x would be the square root of y over 4, you see, y over 4. And because it's the square root of the whole fraction, I can write that as root y over root 4, and root 4, of course, is 2. So in other words, I'm writing x in terms of y using a rearrangement of this. Now what I'm going to do now is replace the x in here with root y over 2. Okay, so from part B, if you like, here, okay, I'm going to say that z equals 8 over x, which is actually the same as 8 over root y over 2. Okay. And we have a fraction within a fraction. That one is in a bracket like that. Now, when you divide by a fraction, you can multiply it and turn the fraction upside down. So that's the same as 8 times 2 over root y. Okay, so I'm just going to write it like that. Okay, now we're nearly there because that is 16 over root y. Okay, and 16 over root y, using the rules of indices and the definition of the square root in terms of a power, is the same as 16 over y to the power of a half. Okay, that's a power of a half. Okay, and that is equal to 16y to the power of negative a half. Okay, so that's using the laws of indices and powers. So there we have it, z equals 16y to the minus a half. So that's our answer, because the question wanted it in the form c y to the n. Okay, so in other words, c is the number 16 and n is the number negative a half, or negative 0.5. Okay, so you could just summarize by saying c equals 16 and n equals negative a half. Okay, quite a tricky question, that one, but they have asked that sort of question in exams before, so it could come up. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Take care.